Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta buzzed like a beehive on crack. Travelers dragged suitcases that squeaked against the polished floors, their voices blending into a dull roar punctuated by the occasional scream of a kid who'd lost sight of their mom. Overhead, the PA system crackled every few minutes, spitting out gate changes and reminders not to leave bags unattended. The air smelled like burnt coffee, cheap perfume, and the faint tang of jet fuel that somehow seeped in from the tarmac. It was chaos, the kind Maya Jackson had learned to tune out after 3 years slinging coffee at Terminal C's only half-decent cafe, Brew and Fly. Maya leaned against the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. Her shift was dragging. 10 hours down, 2 to go, and her feet ached in the beat-up sneakers she couldn't afford to replace. She was 25, but the exhaustion made her feel older, like she'd been running on fumes since she was a kid. Her hair, a cascade of tight curls, was pulled into a messy bun, a few strands sticking to her neck where sweat had dried from the lunch rush. She glanced at the clock above the espresso machine. 8:47 p.m. Jamal was supposed to land any minute now, and she couldn't wait to see him. Her big brother had been locked up for 2 years on some bullshit charge, something about a fight that wasn't even his fault. And today, he was finally coming home. She scanned the crowd milling past the cafe, a sea of tired faces and rolling bags. Businessmen in wrinkled suits barked into their phones. Tourists in flip-flops clutched overpriced water bottles, and a couple of college kids argued over a map. Then she saw him, or thought she did. A tall figure cut through the mess, broad shoulders filling out a dark jacket, hair the same deep brown as Jamal's, moving with that familiar swagger. Her heart jumped. Without thinking, she yanked off her apron, tossed it on the counter, and bolted out from behind the register. "Jamal!" she yelled, weaving through the crowd like she was dodging tacklers on a football field. People grumbled as she bumped shoulders, but she didn't care. She reached him, threw her arms around his back and squeezed tight, burying her face in his chest. "Oh my God, I missed you so damn much you don't even know." He didn't hug her back right away. His chest was solid, too solid, like he'd been hitting the gym nonstop in lockup, and he smelled wrong. Not like Jamal's cheap Old Spice, but something richer, woodsy, with a hint of spice that hit her nose like a slap. She froze. Her stomach twisted as she realized something was off. Way off. Slowly, she tilted her head up, praying she was wrong. The face looking down at her wasn't Jamal's. It was a white guy, maybe early 30s, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of a storm cloud, gray, piercing, and locked on her like she was the only person in the damn airport. His lips twitched into a half-smile, one eyebrow lifting just enough to make her feel like an idiot. He was too handsome, too put together, in a tailored jacket that probably cost more than her rent. She'd hugged a total stranger. A rich-ass stranger. "Oh, shit," she stammered, jumping back so fast she nearly tripped over a suitcase. Her hands flailed as she tried to backpedal. "I'm so sorry, man. I thought you were my brother. You're tall and the hair and... Oh my God, I'm an idiot." The guy didn't move, just stood there with that damn smirk, hands in his pockets like he owned the place. "No harm done," he said, his voice low and smooth, the kind that made you listen even if you didn't want to. "I've had worse first impressions." Maya's face burned. She waved her hands like she could erase the last 30 seconds. "I swear I'm not crazy. He's supposed to be here. And I saw you, and my dumb ass just..." She stopped, realizing she was rambling. "Sorry. Again. I'll just go die now." He chuckled, a sound that rumbled deep in his chest. "Don't do that. I'd hate to lose you after such a warm welcome." His eyes flicked over her, not creepy, but like he was sizing her up, memorizing her. "What's your name?" She hesitated, crossing her arms over her Bruin-Fly polo. Maya Jackson. And you are? Ethan Carter, he said, like it was no big deal. But the name hit her like a brick. Carter. She'd heard it before somewhere, but her brain was too scrambled to place it. He tilted his head, watching her reaction. You're gonna see me again, Maya Jackson. What? She blinked, thrown off by the way he said it, like a promise, not a question. But he didn't answer. He just gave her one last look, turned, and melted back into the crowd, leaving her standing there with her heart pounding and her cheeks on fire. She shook her head, muttering to herself, "What the hell was that?" Back at the cafe, she slid behind the counter, ignoring the raised eyebrow from her co-worker Tasha, who'd watched the whole thing. "Girl, you good?" Tasha asked, popping her gum. She was a few years older than Maya, with braids piled high and a no-nonsense vibe that kept the rude customers in check. "Yeah, I just made a fool of myself," Maya said, grabbing her apron. "Thought I saw Jamal. Turns out I hugged some random dude instead." Tasha snorted. "He didn't look random. Looked like he walked out of a GQ ad. You sure he ain't famous or something?" "Nah, just some guy named Ethan Carter," Maya said, brushing it off. But Tasha's eyes widened. "Carter? Like Carter Enterprises? The real estate people who own half the damn city?" Maya froze, her stomach dropping. "Wait, what? Girl, you don't know? Ethan Carter's the CEO. Billionaire, big shot, all that. Keeps a low profile, but he's loaded. What the hell's he doing here slumming it?" Maya's mind raced. Carter Enterprises. The name clicked now. She'd seen it in old articles her mom kept, the ones about how Mama D's kitchen got bought out and torn down. Her family's soul food joint, the heart of their world, gone because some corporate asshole wanted the land. Could it be the same Carters? No way. That was years ago, and this guy didn't look old enough to have been involved. Still, the coincidence gnawed at her. "Probably just passing through," she muttered, shoving the thought down. "Doesn't matter. I ain't seeing him again." Tasha smirked. "Sure, keep telling yourself that." The rest of her shift crawled by, but Jamal finally showed up at 10:30, looking rougher than she remembered. Thinner, with a new scar above his eyebrow, but still her big brother. She hugged him for real this time, clinging to him like he might disappear again. "You're late, asshole," she said, punching his arm. "Flight got delayed," he grumbled, rubbing the spot. "Good to see you too, lil sis." They caught a bus back to West End, the neighborhood where they'd grown up. The streets were quieter now, lined with old brick houses and corner stores with flickering signs. Their apartment was a cramped two-bedroom above a laundromat, the kind of place where the heat barely worked, and the walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing. Miles, their little brother, was asleep on the couch when they walked in, his small frame curled under a blanket. At 12, he looked even younger, his breathing shallow from the kidney issues that had been getting worse. "He okay?" Jamal asked, voice low. "For now," Maya said, brushing a hand over Miles' forehead. "Doc says he needs more tests, but you know how that goes. Money's tight." Jamal's jaw tightened. "We'll figure it out. I'm back now." She nodded, but the weight of it all pressed down on her. Jamal was out, but he had his own demons to fight, and Miles needed more than she could give working at Bruin-Fly. She crashed on her bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, Ethan Carter's face flashing in her mind. Those gray eyes, that damn smirk. "You're gonna see me again, Maya Jackson." She rolled over, burying her face in the pillow. "Yeah, right," she muttered. "Not if I can help it." But trouble had a way of finding her, and Ethan Carter wasn't the type to fade away. Around midnight, the cafe was dead, the last stragglers gone, and Maya was stuck closing up alone. Tasha had clocked out early, leaving her with a mop and a stack of sticky trays. The overhead lights buzzed, casting shadows across the empty tables. She was wiping down the counter when the bell above the door jingled. She didn't look up, just called out, "We're closed, y'all. Come back tomorrow." "I'm not here for coffee," a familiar voice said. Her head snapped up. Ethan Carter stood there, hands in his pockets, jacket slung over one shoulder like he'd just stepped off a private jet. He looked out of place in the dingy cafe, too polished, too calm. Her pulse kicked up a notch. "What the hell are you doing here?" she asked, gripping the rag tighter. He stepped closer, stopping at the counter. "Finishing our conversation." "We didn't have a conversation," she shot back. "I hugged you by mistake, and you said some cryptic shit. That's it." He smiled, leaning on the counter just enough to close the distance. "Fair. Let's start over then. You're Maya Jackson. You work here. And you've got a fire in you I can't stop thinking about." She crossed her arms, trying to ignore the way his voice slid over her like honey. "And you're Ethan Carter. Rich guy who's got no business creeping around my job after hours. What do you want?" He didn't flinch, just held her gaze. "A coffee. Black. And maybe a chance to figure out why you ran at me like that earlier." She snorted, turning to the espresso machine even though she didn't owe him a damn thing. "It's called a mistake, man. Happens when you're tired and desperate to see someone you actually care about." "Jamal, right?" he said, and she stiffened. "I heard you yell his name." "Brother?" "How the hell do you—" She spun around, narrowing her eyes. "You been stalking me or something?" He raised his hands, palms out. "Just observant. And you're not exactly quiet." She huffed, shoving a cup of coffee across the counter. "Here. Drink it and go. I've got shit to do." He took the cup, his fingers brushing hers for a split second, long enough to make her pull back like she'd been burned. He sipped it, watching her over the rim. "Good coffee. You're wasted here. You know that?" "Yeah, well, not all of us can buy our way out of the grind," she said, turning to grab the mop. "Some of us gotta eat." He didn't respond right away, just stood there, the silence stretching out until it felt heavy. When she glanced back, he was still looking at her, like he was trying to crack a code. "What?" she snapped. "Nothing," he said, setting the cup down. "Just wondering what it'd take to get you to stop running." She froze, mop in hand. "I ain't running from you. I don't even know you." "Yet," he said, and that one word hung in the air like a dare. He pulled a 20 from his wallet, slid it under the cup, and headed for the door. "Keep the change, Maya. See you tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" she called after him, but he was already gone, the bell jingling in his wake. She stared at the empty doorway, then at the 20. It was more than the coffee cost by a long shot, and it pissed her off. She didn't need his charity, didn't need him showing up acting like he owned her time. But as she locked up and headed home, those gray eyes stuck with her, and a tiny, stupid part of her wondered if he'd really come back. The bus ride home was quiet, the city lights blurring past the window. West End was asleep when she got there, the streets dark except for the glow of a street lamp flickering on the corner. She climbed the stairs to the apartment, her legs heavy, and slipped inside without waking Jamal or Miles. In her room, she kicked off her shoes and flopped onto the bed, replaying the night. Ethan Carter, Carter Enterprises. The name tugged at something deep, something she couldn't shake. She closed her eyes, willing sleep to come, but all she saw was him, standing there, smirking, promising more. "Asshole," she muttered, rolling over. She'd deal with him if he showed up again. She wasn't some game for a bored rich guy to play. But as she drifted off, a small, traitorous voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she wanted him to try. "Hey y'all, What's up with Maya and Ethan's first vibe? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Would you trust a guy like him? Let's see where this goes. The next morning hit Maya like a freight train. Her phone alarm screeched at 6 a.m., dragging her out of a restless sleep filled with gray eyes and that damn smirk. She groaned, slapping the screen to shut it up, and rolled out of bed. The apartment was quiet. The faint hum of the laundromat downstairs, the only sound breaking the stillness. Jamal's snores rumbled through the thin wall, and Miles was still curled up on the couch, his breathing steady but weak. She paused by him, brushing a hand over his forehead. He felt warm, too warm, but she chalked it up to the shitty heater. "Hang in there, little man," she whispered, then shuffled to the kitchen to make coffee. The pot sputtered as it brewed, filling the cramped space with a bitter smell that mixed with the stale air. She leaned against the counter, rubbing her eyes. Yesterday felt like a fever dream, hugging some random billionaire, then him showing up at closing like a ghost. Ethan Carter. The name still nagged at her, a splinter she couldn't pull out. She'd meant to ask Jamal about it last night, see if he remembered anything from the old days when Mama D's kitchen went under, but he'd crashed hard after the bus ride. She didn't blame him. 2 years in a cell would wipe anybody out. She poured a mug, black and strong, and sipped it slow, letting the heat wake her up. Her shift didn't start till noon, but she had to get Miles to school first, then figure out how to scrape together cash for his next doctor's visit. The bills were piling up, a stack of envelopes on the table she avoided looking at. Rent, utilities, meds, every damn thing was a fight. Jamal being back might help, but he'd need time to get on his feet, and she wasn't about to lean on him yet, not after everything he'd been through. By 8 o'clock, she had Miles up and dressed, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He moved slow, his brown eyes duller than they should have been for a kid his age. "You good?" she asked, zipping his jacket. "Yeah," he mumbled, but the way he winced when he stood told her otherwise. She bit her lip, fighting the urge to call out of work and take him to the clinic right then. No money, no time. She'd have to trust he'd make it through the day. They caught the bus to his school in West End, a squat brick building with peeling paint and a playground that had seen better days. She walked him to the gate, ruffling his hair. "Text me if you feel off, okay? I'll come get you." He nodded, giving her a small smile that didn't reach his eyes, and shuffled inside. She watched him go, her chest tight. He was all she had left to fight for, him and Jamal. Ruth, their mom, was still around, but she'd checked out years ago, lost in her own head after the restaurant went down. Maya couldn't let that happen to Miles. Back at the apartment, she found Jamal awake, sprawled on the couch with a bowl of cereal. He looked rough, stubble shadowing his jaw, a faded Falcon's hoodie hanging loose on his frame. But his eyes were sharp, scanning her like he could tell something was up. "You good, sis?" he asked, spoon halfway to his mouth. "Yeah, just tired," she said, grabbing her bag. "Gotta head to work soon." "You sticking around today?" He nodded. "Gonna hit the streets, see if anybody's hiring. Ain't sitting on my ass while you carry everything." She smirked. "Good luck with that. Don't get arrested again." He flipped her off, but there was a grin behind it. "Watch your mouth. I'm a free man now." She laughed, the sound cutting through the heaviness for a second, then headed out. The bus to the airport was packed, standing room only, and she spent the ride wedged between a guy who smelled like cigarettes and a lady yelling into her phone. By the time she got to Brew and Fly, her head was pounding, and the last thing she needed was Tasha's teasing grin waiting for her. "Saw your boy last night," Tasha said, tying her apron as Maya clocked in. "Who?" Maya asked, though she already knew. "Mr. Billionaire, Ethan Carter. Came in right before close, looking all mysterious. You got a fan, girl." Maya rolled her eyes, pulling her hair back. "He's not my anything. Just some dude who won't leave me alone." Uh-huh, Tasha said, popping her gum. Keep telling yourself that. He's got that vibe, you know? Like he's trouble, but the good kind. There's no good kind of trouble, Maya shot back, grabbing a tray. He's just a rich asshole who thinks he can buy attention. Tasha shrugged. Maybe. But he didn't look at me like he looked at you. Just saying. Maya ignored her, diving into the lunch rush. The cafe filled up fast, travelers grabbing caffeine fixes, TSA agents on break, a couple of loud kids spilling sugar packets. She moved on autopilot, pouring coffee, wiping tables, dodging the usual creeps who thought a smile meant she was flirting. But every time the bell jingled, her eyes flicked to the door, half expecting Ethan to walk in. He didn't, not yet, and she hated that she noticed. By mid-afternoon, the crowd thinned, giving her a minute to breathe. She was refilling the coffee machine when Tasha nudged her. Heads up, your VIP just rolled in. Maya turned, and there he was, Ethan Carter, strolling through the door like he owned the damn place. Same dark jacket, same easy stride, those gray eyes cutting through the room straight to her. Her stomach flipped, and she cursed herself for it. He slid into a seat at the counter, right in her section, and leaned back, watching her like it was a game. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked over. What you want? She asked, skipping the pleasantries. Coffee. Black, he said, voice smooth as hell. And you to serve it. She raised an eyebrow. You got legs. Plenty of other spots to get coffee around here. Yeah, but I like the view here, he said, smirking just enough to piss her off. She clenched her jaw, turning to grab a cup. You're wasting your time, Carter. Am I? He asked, leaning forward as she set the coffee down. You don't strike me as someone who wastes hers, yet here you are still talking to me. She crossed her arms, glaring. Only 'cause you won't leave me alone. What's your deal, huh? You bored? Need a new hobby? He sipped the coffee, holding her gaze over the rim. Maybe I just like a challenge. I ain't your challenge, she snapped. I'm trying to work here. I can see that, he said, glancing around the cafe. You're good at it. Too good for this dump. She snorted. Oh, you're an expert on my life now. Thanks for the tip, rich boy. He didn't flinch, just kept that steady look. I'm serious. You've got something. Fire, grit, whatever you want to call it. I noticed it yesterday. Hard not to. Her throat tightened, but she shoved it down. Yeah, well, noticing don't pay my bills. You done? Not yet, he said, pulling a 20 from his wallet and sliding it across the counter. Keep coming back till you figure out I'm not the enemy. She stared at the bill, then at him. I don't need your money. It's not about need, he said, standing up. It's about choice. See you tomorrow, Maya. He walked out before she could argue, leaving the 20 sitting there like a taunt. She snatched it up, stuffing it in the tip jar, but her hands shook a little. Asshole. Who did he think he was, waltzing in here like he could figure her out? She didn't need his pity, his coffee orders, or his damn eyes following her every move. The rest of the shift dragged, but Ethan's words stuck with her. Too good for this dump. She'd heard it before, from Ruth, back when she still believed in dreams, from Jamal before he got caught up in his own mess. But hearing it from him, some stranger with a fat wallet, hit different. It pissed her off, sure, but it also stirred something she didn't want to name. Hope, maybe, or just irritation. She clocked out at 10 o'clock. The airport quieter now, just the late-night stragglers and cleaning crew. She was locking up when her phone buzzed. A text from Jamal. Miles ain't looking good. Took him to Grady. Get here when you can. Her heart stopped. She grabbed her bag and ran for the bus, the cold night air biting her face. Grady Memorial was a 20-minute ride. but it felt like hours, her mind racing. Miles had been off all day. Why hadn't she pushed harder? Guilt clawed at her as she stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks. When she got to the hospital, Jamal was in the waiting room, pacing like a caged animal. He looked up, his face tight. "He's stable for now," he said before she could ask. "Doc says his kidneys are acting up again. Needs more tests, maybe a procedure." Maya sank into a chair, hands over her face. "We can't afford that, Jamal. You know we can't." "We'll figure it out," he said, sitting next to her. "I'll pick up something, construction, whatever. We ain't losing him." She nodded, but the numbers spun in her head. Thousands of dollars they didn't have. She'd been scraping by at Brew and Fly, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. She leaned back, closing her eyes, and for a second, Ethan's face flashed in her mind. That 20. His voice. "It's about choice." She shook it off, angry at herself for even thinking it. She wasn't that desperate. Not yet. They sat there half the night, waiting for updates. Miles pulled through, but the doctor's words were grim. More treatment, more money, no guarantees. By 3 a.m., she sent Jamal home and stayed, watching Miles sleep in the dim hospital room. His chest rose and fell, fragile as hell, and she felt the weight of it all pressing down. When she finally left at dawn, the sky was gray, the streets empty. She caught the first bus back to West End, her head against the window. Ethan Carter was the last thing she needed to deal with, but something told her he wasn't done with her. And as much as she hated it, a tiny part of her wasn't done with him either. The hospital air clung to Maya like damp cloth as she stumbled out of Grady Memorial at dawn. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, and her body ached from hours hunched in a plastic chair, watching Miles's chest rise and fall under the flicker of fluorescent lights. The streets outside were still half asleep, the sky a dull gray streaked with pink, and the cold bit at her knuckles as she shoved her hands into her jacket pockets. The bus ride back to West End was a blur. Empty seats, a driver who didn't look up, the hum of the engine lulling her into a daze. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Not yet. But the weight of Miles's diagnosis sat heavy on her chest, a stone she couldn't push off. Back at the apartment, Jamal was sprawled on the couch, one arm over his face, snoring like a chainsaw. She didn't wake him. He'd been up half the night too, pacing the waiting room like he could fight the doctors with his fists. She kicked off her sneakers and sank into the kitchen chair, staring at the stack of bills on the table. The numbers blurred. $800 for rent, $200 for utilities, and now whatever the hell this hospital bill would be. Thousands, probably. More than she'd see in months at Brew and Fly. She pressed her palms into her eyes, trying to think. They'd figure it out, Jamal had said. But how? Her phone buzzed, jolting her out of the spiral. A text from Tasha. "You okay? Heard about Miles. Take the day if you need it." Maya typed back a quick, "I'm good, see you at noon," and tossed the phone down. She couldn't afford to skip work. Not now. Miles needed her on her feet, not falling apart. She dragged herself to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at her reflection. Her curls were a mess, dark circles carved under her eyes, but she set her jaw. "You got this," she muttered, though she didn't believe it. By 11:30, she was back at the airport, the chaos of Terminal C swallowing her up like nothing had changed. Travelers rushed past, dragging bags and barking into phones, while the PA system droned on about delayed flights. Brew and Fly smelled like burnt espresso and greasy pastries, the usual Tuesday stink. Tasha was behind the counter, juggling orders with her usual sass, and she gave Maya a quick nod when she walked in. "You look like hell," Tasha said, sliding a tray of cups her way. "Thanks," Maya muttered, tying her apron. "Feel like it too." "How's the kid?" "Stable for now," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Doc's running tests. We'll see." Tasha popped her gum, eyeing her. "You need anything, you holler, all right? Don't be stubborn." Maya smirked, grabbing a rag. "Who, me? Never." The lunch rush hit hard, a flood of suits and tourists that kept her moving, pouring coffee, wiping spills, dodging the guy who always tried to grab her ass. She pushed through on autopilot, her mind split between Miles and the rhythm of the job. But every time the bell jingled, her eyes darted to the door, half dreading, half expecting Ethan Carter to stroll in. He'd said he'd be back, and as much as she wanted to shove him out of her head, he'd lodged himself there like a damn splinter. Sure enough, around 2 o'clock, there he was. The crowd parted like he had some invisible force field, his dark jacket crisp against the sea of wrinkled polos and hoodies. He slid into his usual spot at the counter, hands in his pockets, that smirk already in place. Her stomach did a stupid little flip, and she cursed herself for it. She wasn't in the mood for his games today, not with Miles in a hospital bed and her world tilting sideways. She marched over, arms crossed. "What you want, Carter?" "Coffee." "Black," he said, voice smooth as ever. "And you to stop looking at me like I kicked your dog." She snorted, turning to grab a cup. "You'd have to get close enough to kick something, and I ain't letting you." He chuckled, leaning forward as she set the coffee down. "Fair. How's your day going?" "Shitty," she said, blunt as a hammer. "Yours?" "Better now," he said, sipping the coffee without breaking eye contact. "You're good at this, you know." "Too good." "Yeah, you said that," she snapped, wiping the counter harder than she needed to. "What's your angle, huh? You keep coming back, throwing compliments like I'm supposed to swoon. I ain't got time for it." He tilted his head, studying her. "No angle. Just like talking to you. You don't bullshit, and that's rare." She stopped wiping, meeting his gaze. Those gray eyes were steady, too damn steady, and for a second, she almost believed him. Almost. "You don't even know me," she said, voice low. "Yet," he said, echoing yesterday. "But I'm working on it." She opened her mouth to fire back, but Tasha called her from the register. "Maya, need you over here." She shot Ethan a glare and walked off, grateful for the excuse. He didn't push, just sat there sipping his coffee, watching her like he had all the time in the world. The rest of the shift blurred by. Orders, spills, a kid who puked on the floor, but Ethan stayed, nursing that one cup like it was a damn ritual. By closing, the cafe was empty, and she was stuck mopping up alone again. He was still there, leaning back in his seat, scrolling his phone. She ignored him, focusing on the wet slap of the mop against the tiles, until he finally spoke. "You ever think about getting out of here?" he asked, voice cutting through the quiet. She didn't look up. "What, the airport? Every damn day?" "Not just the airport," he said. "This grind. You're running yourself ragged, Maya. I can see it." She gripped the mop tighter, turning to face him. "And what's it to you? You gonna swoop in and save me, rich boy? I don't need a hero." "Didn't say you did," he replied, standing up. "Just saying you've got more in you than this. I know what that looks like." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "Oh, you're a psychic now? Tell me, Ethan Carter, what's my future?" "'Cause right now it's a sick brother and a stack of bills I can't pay. You got a crystal ball for that?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell that woodsy cologne again. "No crystal ball, just an offer." Her eyes narrowed. "What offer?" He pulled a card from his wallet, sleek, black, with his name and a number in silver print, and slid it across the counter. "Call me if you need anything. Anything, Maya. I mean it." She stared at the card, then at him. Why the hell would I call you? Because you might not have a choice, he said, voice low. And I'd rather you call me than someone who'd screw you over. She snatched the card, more to get it out of sight than anything else, and stuffed it in her pocket. I don't need your pity, Carter. Take your coffee and go. It's not pity, he said, grabbing his jacket. It's respect. See you tomorrow. He walked out, the bell jingling behind him, and she stood there, the card burning a hole in her pocket. Respect. Bullshit. He didn't know her life. But as she locked up, the weight of his words lingered, mixing with the dread about Miles. She didn't want to need anyone, especially not some slick billionaire who thought he could play savior. But the hospital bill loomed in her mind, and that card felt heavier than it should have. The bus home was quiet, the city winding down. West End was dark when she got back, the laundromat's hum a faint buzz under her feet as she climbed the stairs. Jamal was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a beer, his face drawn. "How's he doing?" she asked, dropping her bag. "Same," Jamal said, voice rough. "Doc called. They're keeping him overnight. Said we gotta talk payment soon." Her stomach sank. "How much?" He shook his head. "Didn't say exact. But it's bad, Maya. Real bad." She sank into the chair across from him, hands in her hair. "We don't have it. Not even close." "I'll figure something out," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Got a lead on a job. Construction, under the table. We'll make it work." She nodded, but the panic was creeping in, sharp and cold. Under the table meant risk, and Jamal, fresh out of jail, couldn't afford that. She couldn't lose him again, couldn't lose Miles. The card in her pocket pressed against her thigh, and she hated herself for even thinking about it. Ethan Carter wasn't the answer. He couldn't be. They sat in silence, the beer can sweating between them, until Jamal finally spoke. "You remember Mama D's kitchen?" She looked up surprised. "Yeah. Why?" "Just thinking," he said, staring at the table. "That place was everything. Then those Carter fuckers took it. Sometimes I wonder if we'd still be okay if it didn't go down like that." Her blood ran cold. "Carter? You mean Carter Enterprises?" "Yeah," he said, frowning at her. "Why?" She swallowed, the pieces clicking together too fast. "Nothing, just heard the name lately." He didn't push, but his eyes narrowed like he could smell the lie. She stood up, muttering something about needing sleep, and bolted to her room. The card was still there when she pulled it out, Ethan's name glaring up at her. Carter Enterprises, the same ones who'd gutted her family's dream, and now here he was, waltzing into her life like some twisted fate. She wanted to rip the card in half, burn it, anything to make it go away. But she didn't. She shoved it into her drawer instead, slamming it shut. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it was restless, full of hospital beeps and Ethan's voice. "Call me if you need anything." She woke up sweating, the clock glowing 5 o'clock a.m. Miles was still in danger, and the bills weren't going anywhere. She didn't know what Ethan wanted, didn't trust him as far as she could throw him. But as she lay there, staring at the ceiling, one thought wouldn't leave her alone. What if he was her only shot? The morning light barely made a dent in the gloom of the apartment when Maya dragged herself out of bed. Her head throbbed, a dull pulse behind her eyes from too little sleep and too much worry. The clock read 6:30 a.m., and the quiet was unnerving. No Jamal snoring, no Miles shifting on the couch. She stumbled into the living room and found it empty. Just a crumpled blanket where her little brother had been. Her heart lurched until she saw the note on the table in Jamal's messy scrawl. Went to check on Miles. Back soon. She let out a shaky breath, sinking into the chair. At least someone was holding it together. The kitchen smelled like stale coffee and desperation as she brewed a pot. The gurgle of the machine filling the silence. She couldn't shake last night. Jamal's words about Carter Enterprises, the card burning a hole in her drawer. It was too much, too fast. Ethan Carter wasn't just some random rich guy anymore. He was tied to the wreckage of her family, whether he knew it or not. And now Miles was tangled up in it, his life hanging on a thread she couldn't afford to mend. She sipped the coffee, bitter and hot, and tried to think. She had to get to the hospital, talk to the doctors, figure out a plan. But every path led back to money they didn't have. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Tasha. "You coming in today?" Boss is asking. Maya stared at it, her thumb hovering over the screen. She needed the shift, needed every penny, but Miles needed her more. She typed back. "Taking the day, family stuff. Cover me?" Tasha's reply came quick. "Got you. Take care of the kid." Relief mixed with guilt as she set the phone down. Tasha was a lifeline, but Maya hated leaning on anyone. By 8:00, she was on a bus to Grady Memorial, the city waking up around her, cars honking, street vendors shouting, the air thick with exhaust and fried food. The hospital loomed ahead, a gray slab against the skyline, and she braced herself as she stepped inside. The lobby smelled like antiseptic and despair, the kind of place that sucked hope out of you if you stayed too long. She found Jamal in Miles's room, slumped in a chair by the bed. Miles was awake, propped up on pillows, his face pale but his eyes bright when he saw her. "Hey, lil' man," she said, forcing a smile as she ruffled his hair. "How you holding up?" "Okay," he said, voice small. "They poked me a lot." "Yeah, they're good at that," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "You're tougher than them, though." He grinned, faint but real, and it hit her hard. She'd do anything to keep that smile on his face. Jamal caught her eye, nodding toward the hall. She followed him out, closing the door softly behind her. "Doc came by," he said, keeping his voice low. "Says it's worse than they thought. Kidneys are shutting down faster. Needs a procedure. Dialysis, maybe more. We're looking at 10 grand minimum." Her knees went weak, but she locked them in place. 10 grand? Jamal, we don't have $10. "I know," he said, rubbing his neck. "I got a guy who might hook me up, some cash job off the books. Risky, but—" "No," she cut him off sharp. "You're not going back to that shit. Not after 2 years. He glared, jaw tight. "Then what, Maya? You got a better idea? 'Cause I ain't watching him die." She swallowed hard, the fight draining out of her. "I don't know. I'll figure something out." "Yeah, you always do," he muttered. But there was no heat in it, just exhaustion. He squeezed her shoulder and went back inside, leaving her alone in the hall. She pressed her forehead against the wall, the cool tile grounding her as her mind spun. 10 grand. It might as well have been 1,000,000. She stayed at the hospital all morning, trading shifts with Jamal so he could chase his lead. The doctors came and went, throwing around words like urgent and payment plan that didn't mean much when your bank account was a joke. By noon, she was back in Miles' room, reading him a comic book he'd picked from the gift shop. His laugh, weak as it was, kept her going, but the clock ticked louder in her head with every page. When Jamal returned, he looked grim. "Job's a bust," he said, dropping into the chair. Guy flaked. "We're screwed." She nodded, numb. "I'll call the social worker. Maybe there's a program or something." "Yeah, maybe," he said, but they both knew it was a long shot. Government help moved slower than molasses, and Miles didn't have time. She left the hospital at dusk, the sky bruising purple over Atlanta. The bus ride home was a fog, her mind stuck on Miles's face, Jamal's frustration, that damn number, 10 grand. She got off at West End, the streets quiet, except for a dog barking somewhere down the block. The apartment felt like a tomb when she walked in, empty and cold. She sank onto the couch, pulling the blanket Miles had used around her shoulders. It still smelled like him, sweat and the cheap soap from the hospital. Her hand brushed her pocket and she froze. The card. She'd forgotten she'd moved it there last night, too tired to think straight. She pulled it out, Ethan's name staring up at her in silver print. Her stomach twisted. She didn't want to do this, didn't want to need him. But Miles's laugh echoed in her head, and her resolve cracked. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking as she dialed. It rang twice before he picked up. "Maya," he said, like he'd been waiting. His voice was warm, steady, and it pissed her off how much it steadied her too. "Hey," she said, throat tight. "You serious about that offer?" "Dead serious," he said, no hesitation. "What do you need?" She closed her eyes, hating every word. "My brother's sick, real sick. Hospital's saying 10 grand for a procedure. I don't have it, and She stopped, swallowing the lump. "I need help." "Where are you?" he asked, all business now. "Home. West End." "I'm coming to you," he said. "Give me 20 minutes." He hung up before she could argue, and she sat there, phone in her lap, heart pounding. What the hell was she doing? Inviting the enemy into her house? Because that's what he was, wasn't he? Carter Enterprises had torn her family apart, and now she was begging one of them to save it. She wanted to puke, but she didn't have time to wallow. She stood up, pacing the tiny living room, trying to brace herself. True to his word, Ethan knocked 20 minutes later. She opened the door, and there he was. Dark jacket, gray eyes, looking too damn calm for the mess she was in. He stepped inside without waiting for an invite, scanning the place like he was cataloging every crack in the wall. "Nice spot," he said, and she couldn't tell if he was joking. "It's a shithole," she said, crossing her arms. "But it's mine." "What's the catch, Carter? You don't just drop 10 grand for nothing." He met her gaze, unflinching. "No catch. I've got the money, and you need it. Simple as that." "Bullshit," she snapped. "Nobody's that generous, especially not you, Carters." His jaw tightened, just a flicker, but he didn't back down. "You're right. I'm not generous. I'm selfish as hell. I'm doing this because I want you to owe me, Maya. Not money, time. Give me a chance to prove I'm not what you think." She stared at him, the air thick between them. "Prove what? That you're not the guy whose family fucked mine over? 'Cause I got news for you. I know who you are." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat off him. "You don't, not yet. But you will. 10 grand, no strings. You don't have to like me, don't have to thank me. Just take it." Her hands balled into fists, nails digging into her palms. She wanted to tell him to shove it, to get out, but Miles's face flashed in her mind, pale, small, fighting. She couldn't say no, not when it was her brother on the line. "Fine," she said, voice breaking. "Do it. But this don't mean I trust you." He nodded, pulling out his phone. "Give me the hospital details. I'll handle it now." She rattled off the info, watching as he made a call, his voice clipped and commanding. Within minutes, it was done. 10 grand wired to Grady Memorial, no questions asked. He hung up, slipping the phone back in his pocket, and looked at her. "It's taken care of," he said. "Miles gets his procedure. You're good." She nodded, throat too tight to speak. Relief crashed over her, but it was tangled with something darker. Shame, anger, fear. She'd let him in, let him fix it, and now she owed him something she couldn't name. "Thanks," she muttered, barely audible. "Don't thank me," he said, heading for the door. "Just don't run yet. We're not done." He left, the door clicking shut behind him, and she sank onto the couch, head in her hands. Miles was safe, for now. But Ethan Carter had just bought a piece of her life, and she didn't know what the hell that meant. Her phone buzzed. Jamal, saying Miles was scheduled for tomorrow. She texted back, then pulled the card from her pocket, staring at it. The silver print glinted under the dim light, a promise or a threat. She didn't know which, but she knew one thing. Ethan wasn't going anywhere, and neither was she. The next day dragged Maya through a haze of exhaustion and raw nerves. She'd barely slept, the couch creaking under her as she tossed and turned, Ethan's voice looping in her head. "We're not done." By 6 a.m., she was up, the apartment still dark except for the faint glow of streetlights sneaking through the blinds. Jamal was already gone, leaving a note. "At the hospital. Call you later." She brewed coffee, the bitter smell grounding her as she tried to shake the weight of last night. Miles was getting his procedure today, thanks to Ethan's money, but every sip tasted like a deal with the devil. She caught the early bus to Grady Memorial, the city waking up slow around her. Delivery trucks rumbling, a few joggers braving the chill, the air sharp with diesel and dew. Her stomach churned the whole ride, a mix of hope and dread, twisting tighter with every block. When she got to the hospital, the lobby was quieter than yesterday, just a handful of people slumped in chairs, faces blank with worry. She found Jamal in Miles' room, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Miles was still in bed, hooked up to an IV, his small frame dwarfed by the white sheets. He looked up when she walked in, managing a weak smile. "Hey, big sis," he said, voice scratchy. "They're taking me soon." She forced a grin, sitting beside him. "Yeah? You ready to kick this thing's ass?" "Yep," he said, nodding. "Gonna be good as new." "That's my boy," she said, ruffling his hair. But her eyes flicked to the IV, the monitors beeping steady, and her chest tightened. She'd seen him like this too many times. Too small, too fragile. She glanced at Jamal, who gave her a tired nod. "Doc says it's set for 9 o'clock, he said, voice low. "Carter's cache cleared. They're moving fast." She swallowed, the name hitting like a punch. "Good. That's good." Jamal's eyes narrowed, catching the hitch in her voice. "You okay with this? Him stepping in?" "No," she said blunt. "But I ain't got a choice. Miles comes first." He nodded, but the tension in his jaw said he wasn't sold. "Just watch yourself, Maya. Guys like that don't give shit away for free." "I know," she said, keeping her gaze on Miles. "I'll handle it." The nurse came in at 8:45, a brisk woman with a clipboard who rattled off prep details Maya barely heard. They wheeled Miles out 10 minutes later, his hand squeezing hers until the last second. She watched the doors swing shut behind him, her throat closing up, and Jamal put a hand on her shoulder. "He's tough," he said. "He'll pull through." "Yeah," she whispered, but the wait stretched out like a lifetime. They sat in the hall, the minutes ticking by on a clock that seemed stuck. Jamal paced. She stared at the floor, and the silence between them grew heavy. Her mind kept drifting to Ethan. Those gray eyes, that calm assurance, the way he'd taken over without blinking. She hated how easy it had been for him, how powerless it made her feel. 2 hours later, the doctor came out, a middle-aged guy with tired eyes and a clipped tone. "Procedure went well," he said, pulling off his mask. "He's in recovery. Should be stable soon, but we'll need to monitor him. You can see him in a bit." Relief hit her like a wave, knocking the air out of her. She grabbed Jamal's arm, and he let out a shaky laugh. "Told you," he said, pulling her into a quick hug. Kid's a fighter." They waited another hour before they could go in. Miles was groggy, his voice slurring from the meds, but he managed a thumbs up that made her laugh through the tears she wouldn't let fall. She stayed by his side, holding his hand, until the nurses shooed them out for the night. Jamal headed home to crash, but Maya lingered, wandering the hospital halls, too wired to leave. She ended up outside, the evening air cool against her face as she sat on a bench near the entrance. The sky was a deep indigo, stars punching through the city haze, and she tipped her head back, breathing deep. Miles was okay, for now. That was enough. But the shadow of Ethan Carter loomed bigger than ever, and she couldn't shake it. Her phone buzzed, startling her. An unknown number. She answered, cautious. "Yeah?" "Maya." Ethan's voice came through, smooth and low. "How's he doing?" She stiffened, sitting up straight. "How'd you get my number?" "Does it matter?" he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. "I heard the procedure was today. Wanted to check in." "He's fine," she said, clipped. "Thanks to you. Happy now?" "Not about that," he said. "I'm glad he's okay. You at the hospital?" "Yeah," she said, wary. "Why?" "Stay there," he said. "I'm 5 minutes out." He hung up before she could protest, and she cursed under her breath, shoving the phone in her pocket. 5 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up. A Bentley, because of course it was, and Ethan stepped out, jacket slung over his arm, looking too damn good for a hospital parking lot. He walked over, hands in his pockets, and stopped a few feet away. "Thought you might need a ride," he said, nodding at the bench. "Or at least some company." "I don't need shit from you," she said, standing up. "You've done enough." He didn't flinch, just held her gaze. "Maybe. But I'm here anyway." She glared, the anger bubbling up fast. "Why? What's your game, Carter? You swoop in, play hero, and now what? You think I owe you my soul?" "No game," he said, voice steady. "I told you. I want your time, not your soul. You're worth more than a transaction, Maya." "Bullshit," she snapped, stepping closer. "You're a Carter. Your family took everything from mine, our restaurant, our life, and now you're here, throwing money around like it fixes it. You don't get to do that." His eyes darkened, a crack in that calm facade. "You think I don't know what my name means? I didn't take your restaurant, Maya. That was before my time. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." "Then why the hell are you here?" she demanded, voice rising. "What do you want from me?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell that damn cologne again, woody and sharp. "I want you to see me," he said, low and fierce. "Not my family, not my money. Me. I'm not them." She laughed, bitter and loud. "You're delusional. You're all the same. Rich assholes who think you can buy whatever you want. I'm not for sale." "I'm not buying," he said, his voice cutting through hers. "I'm asking. Give me a chance to prove it." She stared at him, chest heaving, the air crackling between them. She wanted to hit him, scream, anything to make him feel the mess he'd stepped into. But those gray eyes held her, steady and unyielding, and for a second she wavered. Just a second. "Prove it how?" she asked, voice shaking. "Let me take you somewhere," he said. "Tomorrow night. No strings, no money, just us." She snorted, stepping back. "You're crazy if you think I'm going anywhere with you." "Maybe," he said, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "But you're curious. I can see it." "Fuck you," she said, but it lacked heat. He was right, and she hated it. She turned away, heading for the bus stop, but his voice stopped her. 7:00 p.m., he called. I'll pick you up. Say no if you mean it. She didn't answer, didn't look back, just kept walking. The bus pulled up and she climbed on, her heart pounding as she sank into a seat. She didn't say no, didn't say yes either. But as the city blurred past the window, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something she couldn't walk away from. Back at the apartment, Jamal was asleep on the couch, the TV flickering on mute. She checked her phone. Miles was stable, resting. She should have felt relieved, but Ethan's words gnawed at her. See me. What the hell did that even mean? She pulled the card from her drawer, staring at it, then tossed it back. Tomorrow night. She didn't have to go. She shouldn't. But as she lay in bed, the ceiling staring back, a small, stupid part of her wondered what he'd show her and what she'd find if she looked. The hospital's sterile hum lingered in Maya's ears long after she left Miles' room the next morning. She'd gone back at dawn, needing to see him breathe, needing to know yesterday wasn't a fluke. He was still pale, still small against the white sheets, but his eyes were clearer, and he'd cracked a joke about the Jell-O being better than her cooking. She'd laughed, the sound shaky but real, and stayed until the nurses shooed her out for rounds. Jamal took over, promising to call if anything changed, and she left with a mix of relief and dread churning in her gut. Miles was holding on, but the bills weren't done, and Ethan Carter's shadow loomed bigger than ever. Back at the apartment, she collapsed on the couch, the springs groaning under her. The place smelled like burnt toast. Jamal's attempt at breakfast, probably, and the stack of bills on the table glared at her like a dare. She ignored them, pulling the blanket over her head, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept spinning back to Ethan, to that damn offer. 7:00 p.m., he'd be here in hours, expecting her to climb into his fancy car and play along with whatever game he was running. She didn't trust him, didn't want to, but curiosity gnawed at her, sharp and insistent, and she hated herself for it. By 5:00, she was pacing the tiny kitchen, coffee cold in her mug. Jamal was still at the hospital, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She'd told herself she wouldn't go, wouldn't give Ethan the satisfaction. But the clock kept ticking, and her resolve kept slipping. What did he mean? See me. What could he possibly show her that had changed the fact his family's name was carved into her past like a scar? She slammed the mug down, splashing coffee on the counter, and cursed under her breath. She didn't owe him shit, but Miles's face flashed in her mind, and that 10 grand he'd dropped without blinking. She owed him something, even if it was just a chance to prove he wasn't a total asshole. At 6:30, she gave in. She dug through her closet, pulling out a pair of black jeans and a faded red top. Nothing fancy, nothing that said she was trying. She yanked her curls into a loose ponytail, glaring at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. "You're an idiot," she muttered, but she grabbed her jacket anyway. The card was still in her pocket, a weight she couldn't ignore. And when she stepped outside at 6:55, the air was crisp, the streetlights buzzing to life. Right on cue, that sleek Bentley rolled up at 7:00 sharp, its engine purring like a cat. Ethan stepped out, casual in a dark sweater and jeans, no jacket this time. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a guy who knew how to blend in, except those gray eyes gave him away, sharp and locked on her. He didn't smirk, just nodded, like he'd known she'd show. "You came," he said, opening the passenger door. "Don't get cocky," she shot back, sliding in. "I'm here to see what you're playing at, not 'cause I like you." "Fair," he said, shutting the door and circling to the driver's side. The car smelled like leather and him, woodsy, clean, and she crossed her arms, staring out the window as he pulled away from West End. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice tight. "You'll see," he said, keeping his eyes on the road. "Not far." She didn't push, letting the silence settle as Atlanta slid by. Neon signs, traffic lights, the hum of the city fading into quieter streets. 20 minutes later, he turned into a neighborhood she didn't recognize, all brick buildings and overgrown lots. The kind of place that used to be something before time forgot it. He parked in front of a squat, boarded-up storefront, its faded sign barely legible under the streetlight. Mama D's Kitchen. Her heart stopped. She stared at it, the air sucked out of her lungs, and turned to him, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" "Get out," he said, stepping onto the sidewalk. "I'll show you." She climbed out, legs shaky, and followed him to the door. The wood was splintered, the windows dark with dust, but she'd know that shape anywhere. The curve of the awning, the spot where the old neon sign used to buzz. Her family's restaurant, dead and gone for 10 years, staring back at her like a ghost. "Explain," she said, voice low and dangerous. "Now." He pulled a key from his pocket, unlocking the padlock with a click. "Bought it back," he said, pushing the door open. "Been working on it for a while." She stepped inside, the smell hitting her first. Old wood, mildew, a faint trace of grease that clung to the walls like memory. The place was a shell, stripped bare except for a few tables stacked in the corner, but she could see it. The counter where Ruth used to fry chicken, the booth where she'd done homework as a kid, the spot by the window where Jamal had carved his initials. Her chest tightened, a flood of grief and rage crashing over her. "You bought it?" she said, turning on him. "Why? To rub it in my face?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "To give it back." She laughed, sharp and hollow. "Give it back? You think this fixes what your people did? You tore it down, Ethan. You don't get to play hero now." "I didn't tear it down," he said, voice hard. "My father did. I was a kid when it happened. Didn't even know the name until I dug into the files. When I saw you, heard you talk about your brother, I put it together. This place was yours, and I wanted you to have it again." She stared at him, the words sinking in slow. "You're full of shit," she said, but it sounded weak, her anger cracking under the weight of what he was saying. "Am I?" he asked, pulling a folder from his bag and handing it to her. "Deed's in your name. Signed it over last week. No strings." She took it, hands trembling as she flipped it open. There it was, Mama D's Kitchen, titled to Maya Jackson, dated 5 days ago, before she'd called him, before Miles, before any of this. She looked up, eyes wide. "Why?" "Because I saw you," he said, voice low. "That day at the airport. You ran at me like I was someone you'd fight the world for. I wanted to know who you were, and when I found out, I couldn't let this stay gone. Not if I could fix it." She shook her head, the folder heavy in her hands. "You don't get it. This ain't just a building. It's my mom breaking down, my brother going off the rails, me picking up the pieces. You can't just hand it back and call it even." "I'm not calling it even," he said, stepping closer. "I'm calling it a start. You don't have to forgive me, don't have to like me, but it's yours now. Do what you want with it." Her throat burned, tears she wouldn't let fall stinging her eyes. She wanted to hate him, wanted to throw the folder in his face and walk away, but standing there in the bones of her past, she couldn't. Not yet. "You're an asshole," she said, voice breaking. "Probably," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But I'm not lying." She turned away, running her hand along the counter, dust coating her fingers. Memories hit hard. Ruth singing over the fryer, Jamal sneaking fries, Miles giggling in a high chair. It was all gone, but here it was, somehow back. She didn't know what to feel. Grateful, furious, lost. Maybe all of it. "Take me home," she said finally, clutching the folder to her chest. He nodded, locking the door behind them, and they drove back in silence. West End was dark when they pulled up, the Bentley out of place against the cracked pavement. She got out, pausing by the door. "This don't change nothing," she said, not looking at him. "I still don't trust you." "I know," he said, voice soft, "but I'll be around." She walked inside without a word, the folder trembling in her hands. Jamal wasn't back yet, the apartment empty as she sank onto the couch. She opened it again, staring at the deed, her name in black ink. It was real. Too real. Her phone buzzed. Jamal, saying Miles was awake and asking for her. She texted back, then set the phone down, her mind a mess. Ethan Carter had just handed her a piece of her soul, and she didn't know if it was a gift or a trap. She didn't trust him, didn't want to need him. But as she sat there, the past and present colliding, one thing was clear. He wasn't going away, and neither was this. Whatever this was, Maya woke to the sound of rain hammering the apartment's thin roof, a relentless drum that matched the pounding in her chest. It was barely dawn, the gray light seeping through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. The folder with the deed to Mama D's kitchen lay on the coffee table where she'd left it, its edges curling slightly from the damp air. She hadn't slept much, maybe an hour, snatched between nightmares of Miles flatlining and Ethan's voice whispering, "I'll be around." She rubbed her eyes, the weight of yesterday pressing down harder than ever. Her phone buzzed, cutting through the quiet. "Jamal." She answered, voice rough. "Yeah." "He's awake," Jamal said, sounding as tired as she felt. "Asking for you. Doc says he's doing better than expected." Relief hit her, sharp and fleeting. "I'll be there soon." She hung up, dragging herself off the couch. The rain was a steady roar outside, soaking West End in a cold, gray shroud. She pulled on her jacket, stuffing the folder into her bag. Proof of Ethan's move, a lifeline she still didn't know how to hold. The bus to Grady was packed with wet, grumpy commuters, and she stood the whole way, rain dripping from her hood onto the floor. Her mind churned. Miles getting better, Ethan giving her the restaurant, the way his eyes had burned into hers last night. She didn't trust it, didn't trust him, but she couldn't deny the pull either. At the hospital, Miles was propped up in bed, a tray of half-eaten oatmeal in front of him. He grinned when she walked in, weaker than usual, but real. "Hey, big sis, you look like crap," she laughed, sitting beside him. "Thanks, punk. You're one to talk." Jamal was in the corner, arms crossed, watching her with that big brother stare that saw too much. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," she lied, ruffling Miles's hair. "He's the one we're worried about." Miles rolled his eyes. "I'm fine. When can I go home?" "Soon," she said, hoping it was true. The doctor came by, confirming Miles was stable. Dialysis was working, but he'd need more treatments, more money. She nodded numb as Jamal stepped out to grab coffee. Alone with Miles, she let herself breathe, watching him doze off. He was safe, for now. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan this time. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then answered. "What?" "Meet me," he said, voice low. "West End, the restaurant. I've got something for you." "I'm at the hospital," she said sharp. "I don't have time for your games." "It's not a game," he said. "It's the last piece. 11:00 a.m. I'll wait." He hung up, and she cursed, shoving the phone in her pocket. The last piece? What the hell did that mean? She didn't want to go, didn't want to give him more of her, but that damn curiosity clawed at her again. By 10:30, Miles was asleep, Jamal was back, and she made an excuse about needing air. She caught a bus through the rain, her heart thudding as West End came into view. The restaurant looked different in the daylight, even under the downpour, less like a ghost, more like a promise. Ethan's Bentley was parked out front, and he stood under the awning, hands in his pockets, rain dripping off the brim of his cap. He nodded when she approached, unlocking the door. "Thought you'd bail," he said, holding it open. "Almost did," she shot back, stepping inside. The air was damp, the smell of old wood stronger now, but there was something else, a faint warmth, like someone had been here. She turned to him, arms crossed. "What's this last piece bullshit?" He pulled a small box from his jacket, setting it on the counter. "Open it." She hesitated, then flipped the lid. Inside was a key, old, tarnished, with a tag that read, "Mama D's" in faded ink. Her breath caught. "Where'd you get this?" "Found it in storage," he said, voice soft. "Original key from before the sale. Thought you should have it." She picked it up, the metal cold against her fingers, and the weight of it hit her hard. Ruth locking up after a long night, Jamal sneaking in to grab leftovers, her own small hands clutching it when she'd played cashier. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back, glaring at him. "You think this makes it right?" "No," he said, stepping closer. "But it's yours. All of it. I'm done here, Maya." "Done?" she asked, frowning. "What's that mean?" He pulled an envelope from his bag, handing it to her. "Transfer papers. I'm selling my stake in Carter Enterprises. Moving out of Atlanta. This," he gestured around, "is my last tie. I wanted you to have it before I go." She stared at him, the envelope heavy in her hand. "You're leaving?" "Yeah," he said, eyes steady. "You don't need me hanging around complicating shit. Miles is good, you've got the restaurant, I'm out." Her mouth opened, then closed, words failing her. He was giving her everything, freedom, her past, a clean break, and walking away. It didn't make sense. "Why?" she finally asked, voice raw. "Because you deserve it," he said, simple as that. "And I don't deserve you." She laughed, a broken sound. "You're full of shit, Carter. After all this, you're just gonna bounce?" "Not bouncing," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just letting you win." He turned to go, but she grabbed his arm, stopping him. "Wait." He looked back, rain streaking his face, and for a second, she saw something. Regret, maybe. Or something deeper. She didn't know what to say, didn't know why she'd stopped him. Her hand dropped, and he nodded, like he understood. "Take care, Maya," he said, stepping into the rain. She watched him walk to the car, the key biting into her palm, the envelope trembling in her grip. The Bentley's engine roared to life, and he pulled away, disappearing into the gray curtain of rain. She stood there, alone in the shell of Mama D's, the silence deafening. He was gone, just like that. Her phone rang, shattering the moment. Jamal, voice tight. "Maya, get back here. Now." "What's wrong?" she asked, panic spiking. "It's Miles," he said. "He's crashing, and shit, there's cops everywhere. Something about Carter Enterprises. They're asking about you." Her blood ran cold. "What?" "Just get here," he snapped, and the line went dead. She bolted outside, rain soaking her as she fumbled for her phone, dialing Ethan. It went straight to voicemail. "What the hell did you do?" she muttered, shoving it back in her pocket. The bus was too slow. She flagged a cab, barking the hospital address, her mind racing. Cops. Carter Enterprises. Miles crashing. It didn't add up, but it felt like a trap snapping shut. At Grady, chaos reigned. Police cars lined the lot, lights flashing through the rain, and Jamal met her at the entrance, face ashen. "He's in surgery," he said, grabbing her arm. "Something went wrong, internal bleeding, and these cops, they're saying Carter's tied to some fraud shit, asking if we took money from him." Her stomach dropped. "Fraud?" "Yeah," he said, eyes wild. "They're digging into his company. Money laundering, some big mess. That 10 grand? They think it's dirty." She swayed, gripping the wall. "He paid for Miles, that's it. Tell that to them," he said, nodding at 2 officers heading their way. "They want to talk." The cops were stone-faced, badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Maya Jackson?" one asked, voice flat. "We need you to come with us." She froze, the key still in her hand, the deed in her bag. Ethan's voice echoed, "I'm out." And suddenly, it clicked. He wasn't just leaving. He was running, and he'd left her holding the bag. "I didn't do anything," she said, voice steady despite the shake in her legs. "Then you've got nothing to hide," the cop said, gesturing to the door. "Let's go." She glanced at Jamal, his face a mask of fury and fear, then followed them out, rain pelting her as they led her to a cruiser. The last thing she saw was the hospital fading in the rear view, Miles fighting inside, and Ethan's car vanishing in her mind. He'd given her everything, then taken it all away. Or had he? She didn't know, didn't have answers, just the key cutting into her palm and a future unraveling fast. The cruiser rolled through the storm and she stared out, rain streaking the glass, her reflection a ghost. Was he a savior or a snake? Did she chase him or let him burn? The story stopped there, suspended in the downpour, leaving her and everyone hanging. "Hey, y'all, what just happened?" What? Is Ethan a hero or a villain? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Should Maya chase him or let him go? Tell me what you think of this wild ending, and catch more stories on the channel.